Day 26 of the Diddy trial, and we had an unexpected visitor today.
Yeah, celebrity visitor.
Kanye West showed up at the trial. Now, I guess he wanted to get into the main jury room. He said he wanted to support Diddy. Wore all white, I guess, sort of a
little nod to the white parties,
to the
right?
white parties. But he wasn't allowed into the main courthouse. He had to go into the overflow room, the ante room, where he was allowed to sit. He stayed for about 10 minutes or something, and then he took off.
Yeah, it was sort of a bizarre scene. So he's a huge celebrity. Whether you like Kanye or not, he's become a very controversial figure. But him showing up is a big deal. So he gets out of the car. He's in the all white. He's got the shades on. He sort of daps up one of Diddy's sons outside. He's asked whether he's there for supporting Diddy. He does say yes. But that's as communicative as you get out of Kanye. He then walks into the courtroom, went into this overflow room. But I think the entire purpose of him being there was as a show of support to Diddy, his friend. He wanted Diddy to see him in the gallery. He wasn't able to do so. And then he's sitting in an overflow room with a bunch of journalists and other onlookers. And he says,
"What am I doing here?
This isn't for me." So he leaves.
So I find this incredibly fascinating because yesterday we heard testimony from Jane, this woman testifying under the name Jane, who says she was at freak-offs, she participated in a lot of freak-offs with Diddy, but also went as an onlooker to another freak-off in Vegas. Diddy wasn't there. We talked all about that.
With a big celebrity rapper.
With a big celebrity rapper and that person's wife in the last couple of years. Now, there is no evidence that we know of that big celebrity rapper was Kanye, but the Twitterverse was crazy. Everybody was identifying, speculating, rumor-mongering that it was Diddy. That it was Kanye.
Yes.
For Kanye, then the very next day to show up in court, it's like, wow, he's either unaware of it or doesn't care, or I guess the third thing is leaning into it.
Yeah, it almost seems like this was a lot of speculation out there. As you said, there's no evidence directly linking it, but the news of her testimony about going to this celebrity rapper, unnamed rapper's freak off happened at the end of the day. Court is closed, and then the next time court opens, Kanye's there to walk in. So the timing's very, very conspicuous. Obviously, people are going to try to connect those dots.
Yeah.
There's no evidence.
He's a man who is always acutely aware of public perception of him, right? He is somebody who follows the news, takes great umbrage at what people say about him online, is kind of defiant, and picks fights with people you've never heard of online. He's one of these people who's, again, very aware of what people are saying about him. So I got to think that maybe he was aware of the rumor mill and didn't care or leaned into it.
And remember, I don't want to be too conspiratorial minded about this, but remember, Diddy's attorneys wanted the name of that rapper to be mentioned, right? And they were turned down. The Judge Subramanian said, the relevance of this isn't high enough for the potential embarrassment. I'm going to just allow this story in under the name of unnamed rapper. Do you think there's any possibility, given that Kanye is a friend of Diddy, Diddy's side wanted the name out, that if the speculation is accurate, and we don't know it to be, that they said, hey, we want people to connect these dots. Could you show up tomorrow? What do you think of that?
Well, I think that makes sense from Diddy's point of view,
Sure.
But how does it make sense from Kanye's point of view? Unless he
likes it.
Look, Kanye has not been shy about the fact that he has I don't even know what to call it, a hypersexual relationship with Bianca. Maybe this is maybe you're right.
Part of this kink is cool.
We are just speculating.
We are speculating.
We are off in our little flight of fancy here. But Kanye probably, if he was part of these things, probably would say, yeah, this is what I'd like to do.
Yeah, and in that story,
it's normal.
The rapper did nothing wrong. He said, I'm into you, Jane, but it's not as if there's any sort of incriminating about
coercion or anything like that.
That's right. So that presence, I could see someone like Kanye, and again, we are just speculating, saying, that's kind of cool. Sure, I'll do that. I'll show up. It's a cool story about watching a live sex show.
So let's transition from what we speculate may have been the case to something we know was the case, which is we had another witness testifying on the stand today about these freak-offs and the cleanup work, and there was actually pretty good nuggets. This is not just cumulative. There were some new facts that came out that are pretty interesting.
That's right. So this is Jonathan Perez. He is a guy who worked for Diddy as a personal assistant from December 2021 to September 2024. So late period personal assistant. He said, Diddy usually
Diddy was arrested.
That's right.
He worked right up until the day
until the bitter end.
He was basically his assistant when he got arrested.
That's right. And you'll notice this overlaps with the period of the relationship between Diddy and Jane.
Right.
The testimony. This is post Cassie. He said, Diddy usually had 3 or 4 personal assistants working for him at any given time. He did get an immunity order. He pled the 5th, but then he was offered immunity and then had to testify. What he said was he set up something that he called King Nights. This is now the third term that we've heard. The government has called it freak-offs. Jane testified that these were called hotel nights, and these were something he referred to as King Nights. They're all the freak-offs. And he said it involved a lot of prep. He would set up the rooms, bring the food, the liquor, the music, the red lights, the condoms, the lubricant, and occasionally honey. So people really fixated on this inclusion of honey. Apparently it was there to enhance a man's libido. I found some of this testimony just sort of...
Was it actual honey, or was that sort of a...
Honey.
There's no, like, that's not a euphemism for something, right?
Oh, no. I think it's actual honey, and it's maybe
okay.
somewhat
I
connected
thought it was like
to...
a Spanish fly sort of thing that they called honey. You know, they brought it into these freak-offs, yeah.
His testimony was that he had to set these rooms up for 12 to 24 hours of supplies, almost like these freak-off scenarios were bunkers, where the marathon sessions that went on within these sessions, you just needed supplies. You needed honey, you needed a lot of things, liquor, and so forth. But what I found most interesting, and I do think that kind of testimony falls into the category of just making Diddy look like a creepy pervert or someone with a kink or something like that. I don't think it gets you too far setting up a room. 2 points did stand out. He did say that one of the most important things was cleaning up after these nights. There would be oil all over their hotel room. We've heard similar
Let's not describe
testimony.
what would be all over the hotel
Right.
room. We can all imagine what might have been there.
Right, but apparently you were entrusted as the assistant to clean up everything so there wasn't a trace.
Because that's what they were really afraid of.
what
And
happened.
they've talked about this, and we've had other witnesses who have talked about cleaning up, and they said that the real concern that Diddy had was that hotel staff or whomever would come in afterwards and find the remnants of the freak-offs and therefore have a story to tell to the press, to the gossip, whatever it is.
Right.
And they wanted to snuff that out by having really thorough cleaning up.
And again, this is not cleaning up something that was illegal. It's cleaning up something that might have been
Embarrassing,
embarrassing to
right,
Diddy.
right.
So I'm not sure it sort of connects in that way, but the prosecutors sure do like this kind of testimony because it sounds like he was aware that it was off in some way and wanted to clean up the remnants. The other really interesting point is because his period of employment overlaps exactly almost with Jane's relationship with Diddy, he saw Jane a lot. He says he would help her choose lingerie, heels, dresses, that she trusted his opinion on what to buy. And he said that Jane, the person who just testified about feeling coerced and forced into a lot of these freak-offs, never seemed upset or unhappy after one of these king nights. I think this is excellent testimony for the defense because Jane was up there. She was compelling in some ways. She talked about the violence. She talked about threats to cut off her rent payments. But now you have someone who's a third party who's seemingly disinterested and doesn't have a bias or an axe to grind and says, she never looked that way to me.
Right.
So that tells the jury that maybe she didn't look that way to Diddy either.
Right. Yeah, interesting. I mean, again, these are little tidbits. You never know how they're going to land on the jury. I can't stop thinking about the fact that, like, can you imagine? I'm about the same age as Diddy. If somebody were to say to me, we're going to set up a 24-hour sex fest, I'd be like, I'm good.
I'm exhausted. I don't roll that way. I need a sandwich and to go to bed afterwards. Like, I can't imagine.
Boy, I took an inch and you took the mile.
But yeah, so how do you think that someone else saying, I didn't see her as looking coerced or forced in any way, she seemed enthusiastic to me, that hits in some way that Diddy might have also seen the same kind of enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think, look, again, you don't know what the jury's going to pick up. You don't know what's true also. Like, you know, this is, but whatever. I mean, these are little facts. Diddy has some ground they need to make up. Their side has some ground to make up. Maybe this does a little bit for them. I don't really think it matters that much. The real essence of this case is what happened to Cassie. Jane is just, again, it's just, we're compiling evidence to create this atmosphere that Diddy was this sexually deviant monster. And this, I think, probably tends to that. But at the same time, I don't think Jane, on balance, I know there's been some allegations of some abuse, some physical violence. On balance, you don't have nearly the sort of horrific testimony that you heard from Cassie.
I think that's right. And I don't think the prosecutors are pinning their case entirely on Jane. They led with Cassie. They, as they presented witnesses, they're probably going with their strongest first, and they led with Cassie. They knew that would be the most compelling type of testimony. Now they have Jane, apparently the third unnamed victim in the case who was going to testify but then was MIA, is not going to testify. The prosecutors have backed off trying to compel this or subpoena or actually go track this person down. So it seems like they're wrapping up. the sex trafficking portion of the case. Maybe they'll have a little more in RICO. Some of the other testimony was what they seized in the raids, which a cache of weapons, some of them with the sanded off serial numbers. That I think goes to the RICO operation sort of elements, and some of the lube maybe goes to the sex trafficking. Listen, I think that kind of testimony, people get it at this point.
Yeah.
He had a lot of stuff. It doesn't really prove that he was committing a crime, but it does look like he had a lot of weird stuff.
We have one more bit from this testimony, from today's testimony to talk about, with today's court proceedings to talk about. I did want to jump in with Dana's comment. She says we're all wrong. These are honey packs. She believes it's called Vital Honey, and mentioned in Kanye's lawsuit from Lauren Pisciotta, one of the
I remember that lawsuit.
yeah,
yes.
exactly, his former personal assistant. And so I guess these are little controlled honey packs for energy, like much.
Oh,
like,
so they're fortified in some way, or they're just pure honey?
My guess is that they're pure honey, but I was picturing sort of a honey bear that you would open the top and squeeze in your mouth or something like this. This is clearly
Now we know what Jason does for energy. You know,
this is
pops the
clearly
honey bear.
like those gel packs you have as
Yes.
a runner or whatever it is. I'm guessing.
Listen.
Thank you, Dana. If you're right, then thank you very much. 'Cause
Yeah.
that is that's edifying to us. Last thing we want to talk about. Juror number 6 is a problem in this case. Juror number
Yes.
6 has been, I guess, there was somebody who overheard, one of the court staff had overheard that juror number 6 no longer lived in the district in which they lived when the case started. Obviously, the jury of the peers is supposed to all be from the Southern District of New York. This person actually has now moved to, I believe, Brooklyn.
To Jersey.
To Jersey, sorry,
Yes.
which is not in the Southern District of New York, obviously. And so the defense was trying to get this person removed.
The prosecution
I'm
is
sorry,
trying to get this
prosecution,
person
okay.
removed, and that's what's interesting. So, look, the residency requirement matters because, as you said, you're entitled to a jury of your peers. They should be from the Southern District of New York. But seizing on this after 3 weeks of trial, the prosecutors are saying, look, this person hasn't been totally candid with the court, and we want to get this. They have to be removed from the jury. The defense is saying, come on. I
Yeah.
mean, why do you really want this person off? Is it really the residency requirement that you're seizing on? The defense has made arguments that this is a black male juror who you don't want for some reason on this jury, and
well.
you've now pretextually seized on this residency requirement, which is a real one. I don't want to dismiss it, but we're 3 weeks into the case. If he moved, is it that big of a deal?
Regardless of the, obviously the prosecutors want this person removed for a reason. If this person, if they felt this was a great juror for them, they would not want this person removed, regardless of the residency requirement. So
Yes.
let's just scrape off the patina of any sort of like, well, residency requirements. No, they want him off because they don't think he's a good juror for them.
That's right. And that is what the defense team is pouncing on. And they made these arguments to Judge Subramanian, who was inclined to just say, oh, if he doesn't satisfy the residency requirements, I do have to dismiss him. That's what we have alternates for. We'll slot one in. But then when he heard these arguments, he said, I am leaning towards just dismissing this juror and putting an alternate, but I will take this under submission because those are serious allegations. And you don't want to just remove jurors willy-nilly based on the prosecution raising something arguably pretextual, right?
I to be quite honest with you, I don't know procedurally in federal court whether or not somebody who leaves the district during the pendency of the trial necessarily excludes them from the opportunity to serve on the jury. I would think it would. You have to be in the district in order to serve, but maybe not. Maybe there's got to be some sort of federal rule in place. That's why Supermadian, I'm sure, wanted to go back and take a look at the legalities of this and have his clerks do a little research.
Yeah, he's a very careful judge, and I think he will apply the letter of the law. And if there is a true residency requirement that you can't leave the district, I think he will replace it with an alternate. But it's interesting to hear that the defense thinks you guys are playing games. And there's a reason you've noticed his demeanor, perhaps. Maybe you've seen the way he's been responding to testimony, and you saw a way to get a juror off who you think might disrupt your case. I thought it was interesting.
So Enhanced Creators actually asked this question: when a juror is dismissed, are they replaced by a backup? Yes, they have 6 alternates, I believe, in this case, ready to go. They're listening to all of the testimony, and they will just be slotted in. You will not miss a beat. The time that it can really be problematic is when a juror is dismissed after jury deliberations have started. Because what happens when that happens, the person is slotted in, but jury deliberations, which in many cases, including I suspect in this one, can last many days, if not weeks, has to start afresh. You've got to start with day one of discussions, going through all of the evidence again, and that can be really disruptive. Here, they will slot that person in from.
It's exciting for that alternate. I've been an alternate juror, and you just sit there. You have to follow it closely, but you have no power. You're never going to deliberate, and then you get called into the big show. It's like being called up to the major leagues. Let's go with Bezo Legos. Comment says, Kanye definitely showed up for the attention and left, just like the Grammys.
I think there might be a point there.
Listen, I mean, that we know Kanye.
Yeah.
Let's look at Fact Check TV says, do you think the media played a role in hindering the public opinions with all the information put out unrelated to this case?
I mean, this is what the media does, right? None of it is truly unrelated. The media is there for a couple of reasons. Number one, to inform the public. Number two is to sell copy, sell newspapers, sell television shows, sell websites. So they put out information that the public finds interesting. And that information is not always going to be totally germane to the trial itself. They're going to put out the information again that people want to consume.
I think that's right. And when you see a headline like he liked honey during his freak-offs, it's not super relevant to the case, but it is part of the trial. And there's a reason they elicited this testimony. And it is interesting. And people follow cases for myriad reasons. And one of them is just like to learn more about Diddy.
So Empowered Wendy says, can't Diddy just be transporting people to create porn, I guess? He's a producer, director, they're independent contractors and employees. He could be, but that's not what the testimony or evidence is. He was transporting people to have sex with them. He was filming them not for distribution as part of some sort of a porn industry. He was having sex with them and filming them for his own prurient interests, number one, and number two,
to hold over
their heads, which he did. He didn't disclose. He threatened people that if you go public with what's happening here, I'm going to disclose this. That is not porn at all.
Listen, I don't want to make light of this, but he wasn't showing Cassie the dailies from their shoot to say, like, do you approve of this video? He was using it to threaten her, according to her testimony. So it's very different than being a porn producer. I don't think that'll be his defense.
So Derek, last person, I like your face TV. I haven't heard the prosecution is rested calling witnesses. Did that officially happen today? No, prosecution is not rested yet. I think based on earlier estimates in the trial, I think we have at least one more week estimated to go in the prosecution's case in chief, 1 to 2 weeks.
I think that's right. I think they'll end when they end, and that could be a dynamic sort of thing. That when they feel they've gotten the testimony they need, they may sort of back off and allow the defense. Defense has to be ready to present their case in chief whenever the prosecution rests, and they can pull the rug earlier than that. But I think you're right. They seem to be wanting to present a cumulative case of information. I think they run the risk of boring the jury or bringing up things that backfire on them. But I do think we have probably another few days to a week.
It's often the case that the prosecution will structure the testimony, as we've seen here, with the biggest witnesses right at the top, and then you get into the experts, and you'll bring up certain fact witnesses, and then just like sort of, I don't know, compiling the elements of a television show, you will wait until the end, and you will put something fiery at the end.
Yep.
Something to leave in the jury's mind,
Bookended.
something that you bookended, something that the defense will have to respond to, react to in their case. So I'm sort of on a little bit of a tenterhooks here, waiting for.
But there is a
the
feel. I mean, even though it's largely theater, they're watching the jury every day, and they're reading the cues that they can of how this testimony is landing, what more they need to prove. So there's a bit of sort of uncertainty in the trial, even though it's largely theater.
Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll see you on a Monday.
See you next time.